Okay.
I'm only here for the party. Trust me, we're just getting started. The sound, the vibe. I feel so alive. You're only here for the party.
Everyone, please welcome Sean, Richard, and Zach to the stage.
Woo!
Thanks, Justin Alex. Really appreciate that. So as they said, my name is Zach Bricker. I'm the lead solutions engineer here at Supermetrics. I'm joined by Richard, who's the global head of search strategy and SEO at BBC, and Sean, who is the director of digital at Snapshot Interactive. Thank you so much for joining us. Rich, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came into the space.
Sure. Hi, I'm Richard Nazarewicz, or Rich, as most people call me. So I'm currently leading up the SEO and search strategy products and strategy practice for BBC.com globally. And that's .com in North America, Canada, and rest of the world in English. BBC is obviously a huge presence in the UK. And there is also wonderful partners over at World Service that are in 40 plus countries. So I focus on the .co.uk stuff, the .com stuff, sorry. I started my life really early in this and I kind of stumbled into it because I started off as a consultant at Digital Equipment Corporation, which had a little product called Alta Vista. That ended up being sort of one of the sort of seedlings of Google and search engines, and go and read a great article by Daddy Sullivan about that. I used Alta Vista primarily to sell servers and storage, and I knew it could do more. And we used to have these little kiosks where we would demonstrate search. From there, I kind of moved on, and that became HP. That ended up moving me into Madrid for a project. I ended up staying there for 13 years, starting a digital agency, building out websites for all sorts of different companies and brands. And then I got married, moved to the States, and here I started a consultancy. Then I went to Wall Street Journal, Dow Jones, and worked with News Corp, helped build up their SEO practices there with a wonderful team of people, learned tons, and now I'm at the BBC, and this is my second year, and I love it. I'm a dad, and I have two girls and 2 dogs.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rich. Sean, how about yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Zach and Rich. Happy to be here. I'm Sean Whitmore, the director of digital here at Snapshot. I started in digital marketing, started in digital altogether, kind of a digital first, digital native. I started as a digital marketer, and I found like that really what I was trying to do and the problems I was trying to solve and the clients that I still work with today. I'm really a digital business strategist at the end of the day. So kind of applying kind of like the fact that I grew up on the internet, not as far back as Alta Vista, but Google and everything, and kind of the insights and the kind of development of it over time. Manage everything from paid, organic, analytics. So Supermetrics has been a huge help to our team here and our clients. So and I'm a dog dad, only one dog, but yeah, excited to be here.
Thanks so much, Sean. I am unfortunately dogless, but I do love dogs. So maybe like I'm a dog uncle to some of my friends.
I can send you one of mine.
around
I'll happily send you one.
Send it on over. I know my partner will be very happy about that. But talking a little bit, we're going to shift over from dogs to marketing, although marketing and dogs are probably a great space. I'm sure a lot of the influencers and just people in general would agree. If there's a dog in an ad, I'm probably going to watch it. But let's talk a little bit about the stuff that is less fun and cute, and talk a little bit about navigating the messy marketing space. Here at Supermetrics, we've been kind of discussing how marketing and marketing data is very, very messy. And even though we are now in a very digital world where stuff is coming across much more structured, it still has a lot of chaotic systems in it, like SEO, and the journey through this digital transformation of data that's happening and has been happening, slowly, I guess, over the last decade or so. It's something that's a really interesting space. And Rich, I'd love to get your take on it as someone who is what I'll call a digital pioneer. You were out there trailblazing in the digital space prior to all of the APIs existing and REST being a thing, and connectors pulling all this data into a location for you. when you were likely dealing with, CSVs and space separated and screenshots of everything, which we're probably also still dealing with screenshots somewhere. Somewhere out there is someone who is taking a screenshot of Facebook ads and sending it to a client. Rich, if you could describe your data journey for us
Yeah, sure.
and what led you to Supermetrics.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, we talked about screenshots the other day, I think. Yeah, so when I spent the last decades trying to get people to stop screenshot things into reports. It still happens, and sometimes you have to do it. But I will say one thing, that I was an early adopter of I learned in my early life studying computer science SQL, and it just set me up for success because I'm not fantastic at it, but it allowed me to pull data. I can retrieve data from a database, right? I also used Excel heavily back in the day. That said, there were things around that would like I remember when I was starting out in this journey with digital. Like I remember Python being a joke. Like people used to say that's not a real thing, and lo and behold, it came back to bite me in the bum. And it's been, it's common practice. What happened is, what I did see was various people started building out Python scripts to run lots of to pull data. So spending time, and if you change one data point or something in the API, the whole thing breaks. So I kind of I just really needed something to manage that for me and not spend any time, not have data science people or data team get involved in that. And I landed on Supermetrics. I kind of stumbled into finding you, and you have come on so far. But at this point, you've got so many APIs and so many ways to pull data and all different flavors of blending. But to be honest with you, I'm still just a big fan of putting things into a sheet, into a Google sheet or an Excel sheet.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rich. Sean, I guess same question. What describe as someone who is, like you mentioned, digital first sort of came about when things were a little more structured. I don't want to say fully structured. It's still not. But describe your data journey for us, and what led you to Supermetrics.
Yeah, I mean, I have been working with Supermetrics for pretty much the entirety of my career. Again, when you guys were just doing Google Sheet templates and kind of, visualizing the data that's just kind of pulled or ripped straight from the platforms. I mean, that was a huge unlock for a lot of marketers back then, and still is today. And obviously, to Rich's point, the advancements and growth that you guys have afforded, small to medium-sized teams, I think it can't be understated. And I started off only working in Google Ads. I hadn't even done SEO yet. So for me, it was like, I could pull everything into an Excel spreadsheet, be simple. The moment that I add another channel, the moment I added, Google organic insights, trying to pull something from Search Console, or, Facebook, trying to combine Facebook and Google data, like I immediately ran into problems, and so, when I went in-house and worked at Keen Footwear and even Nike, there was a lot of like custom, managed by entire teams, data systems, whether it's data warehouses, data lakes, whatever it is. And that is, you got SQL, you got a possible Python, R, a bunch of different languages you could try to employ to extract data. You get the best insights. That is not a realistic operational setup, though, for agencies today, if you ask me. I think that there are a lot of agencies out there that are investing in that, and absolutely it's worthwhile at scale. But I would say for the small to medium-sized businesses and the clients that we work with that are actually still kind of developing their digital analytics infrastructure, we kind of help them do that. Supermetrics has allowed, me a couple of button presses that would have taken, downloading a bunch of CSVs, combining data, possibly doing a pivot table in Excel and creating like a custom template. And like that is just, to take the time down from 4 hours of analysis to maybe 40 minutes of building a report allows me that extra 3 hours and 20 minutes or so to focus on the insights. And so that's pretty much where I'm at now. Is spending less time on getting the data and spending more time, analyzing the data and, getting insights from it.
Yeah, absolutely, Sean. Now that actually we have a Q&A here, and we did have a question come through, and they asked, I should say, where do you see the balance between automation and manual analysis? And that's kind of an interesting thing. We're discussing your data journey, and you both were kind of talking about that. So briefly, if you could, Sean, where do you see the balance here? I know we talked a little bit about this leading up to it, the Pareto principle and everything, but maybe in your own words, what's that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, not to get into the weeds of like different attribution models, as that could be a whole session in and of itself. But I will say, and we were talking about this earlier too. I think Rich mentioned it, but avoiding analytical paralysis or analysis paralysis is going to be like, I think, a primary thing that everyone's got to do every day. Using that as kind of a modality of your day-to-day to not be overwhelmed by all the different data sources, the platforms versus, if you have first-party data, and then the attribution models, but really trying to find the source of truth. Getting as close to that, aligning your internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, if you're working with an agency or external partners, to a source of truth, a set of KPIs, both macro and micro, and then sticking to it. And so what Supermetrics allows you to do, once you do all that, like that's an entire process in of itself. I'm sure it's an entire change management, a course in and of itself. But once you do that, Supermetrics allows you to kind of quickly visualize it. And what we work towards is, getting the decision makers, the C-suites, the insights quickly, whether it's in a scorecard type fashion, a one pager, so they can be like, okay, A plus B got me C. How do I get to D and E? And that's kind of the philosophy that we employ. And these tools just allow us to get there a little bit faster rather than sitting in spreadsheets, sifting through data and trying to make sense of things that sometimes don't work well together. So.
Yeah, that's, one of the things that we like to think about with Supermetrics is sort of that time saving component, which is what you're alluding to, that balance, and with the questions for the balance between automation and manual. As Rich mentioned, people are still sending screenshots, and at some point you're probably going to do it as well. I've done it as well, as much as someone who
I'm
is,
not a screenshot hater. I'm not a screen. I just like it shouldn't be the norm. It's like I take screenshots all the time for finding bugs, all sorts of things. There's a place for it. I will say one thing on that. There are instances where you have to manually pull data, or semi-manually at least. Automation is not always possible, and that's sometimes a restriction on a product, an API, and ops feed, or whatever, or dependency down, upstream.
Yeah, and Sean mentioned actually working with aligning your internal teams, and that brings us to some of the pain points that happen when you are seeking to automate your data pipeline, and maybe in particular or especially inside the marketing space. Uh, we're not always the first ones to have access or the first ones to be looked at for data needs and data governance. Rich, can you talk a little bit about the pain points behind, or actually, not the pain points there, but how you can work with your internal teams to accommodate the data governance teams while also getting your needs met?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I'm a believer in you. Well, not. I've seen it's the only way I've learned it to work is you have data teams in house. You have data scientists in house. And use data scientists. So I'm not. I have to bow to data scientists. I pretend to be. I look like some people think I am when I'm not. And but I do know how to pull data from different places. There's data governance in place in large companies like mine, and even in smaller companies to a point. There should be. And I'm a big believer in adhering to that and InfoSec and security practices. So first of all, I'll go and see what's the environment I'm working with, what's the governance, what's in place, and then conform to that and not look to go out of the box. But I will make the case for the data points that I need, why I'm needing them a certain way, and introducing new data points, which I think we'll come to at some point. But yeah, there's a lot governance and InfoSec internally for larger organizations definitely must be adhered to at all times.
Absolutely. It's one of those pain points that exist and things that we look for in ways to navigate through them. Some of the other pain points and challenges might not be so obvious. So Sean, what are maybe some of the pain points that you could see people that are not so common run into with agencies and brands? What do you see there that some things they might want to look out for that might not be as apparent?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple aspects to that, and it can cover kind of like a couple of different things. I mean, you've got like the brand marketers and you've got like performance marketers, right? So you've got two different sets of metrics that you're probably looking at. So I would say that what can be a pain point is, again, it's like trying to find what you need to focus on, because there are directional KPIs, there are directional metrics, and then there are like kind of the transactional ones, right? They're all actually important. A performance marketer might look at impressions, clicks, and click-through rate and call them vanity metrics. But that's exactly what someone who's on the brand side trying to build like an incremental brand lift is what they're going to actually need to look at, because the transactional nature of when someone first sees your ad or is first engaging with your brand, that first impression, right? Like it doesn't always kind of come back to the bottom line in the same ad platform. So, looking at the marketing kind of ecosystem, your total marketing landscape, with that in mind is going to be incredibly important, because, if you're just looking at bottom of funnel tactics, you're just going to get bottom of funnel KPIs. If you're trying to fill the funnel to grow that overall, bottom line and that incrementality that we're as marketers we're looking for, you've got to fill the funnel, and those are going to be channels that won't show that direct return. So I guess a little bit of kind of that education is something that we do at Snapshot with our clients, especially some of them that are building their analytics infrastructure, kind of like it's kind of new to them. So, they don't have the last 15, 20 years of best practices. So that's kind of what we focus on, because that's a pain point if you don't kind of like, not necessarily hold their hand, but kind of guide them and kind of provide this insight and kind of the context.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like they've got some you have some interesting challenges there, and those uncommon pain points, things to look for, are really important, because that's where you're going to get tripped up the easiest when you have something where you don't expect. On to something a little more specific, maybe. Rich, you're a master of the SEO space. What are some of the specific pain points that you've experienced with the SEO space, and how has leveraging Supermetrics sort of helped you overcome those?
First of all, I'm not a master of the SEO space. It's a never-changing wilderness that you will never tame. If anyone tells you they're an expert, I encourage most people to remove expert from their title, because it's just say you do it, and it's more, we're moving into the AI space now. Things are going to change very fast, so you got to do your homework. Yeah, that's another conversation. But what was the question?
What are some of the pain points specific to the SEO space?
Well, we have a load of data points that other people don't have. So we have got some leverage there. And that's what I found that in many instances, even when I have my own agency. It's like we because we have Search Console and Bing Webmaster Tools, there's an amazing wealth of data there that maybe some data the teams don't have. They may not have access to Discover, which is a big source of traffic for most publishers. I'm in the publishing space. So we have AMP, we have other points where we can get data points that we could share, and we're coming to that, I know, but we're a big believer in that. When having that leverage enables conversations to be very fluid, I think, and for the most part, I have had very difficult conversations of why I want this data, why I need my own tables. But I think I've made the case for the most part, and it doesn't always live where I want it to live, but fine, and I will go along with governance as needed, but I will make my case for needing the data that I need to build up the reporting I need.
Yeah, you have to be an advocate for yourself and an advocate, for your business. Sometimes that always happens.
Yes.
It's one of the most important things, I think, as in our sort of space, as the people that are looked to for answers in a lot of ways. People are coming and asking you, you have your CEO, or you have, your project leader, or someone coming in and expecting answers and expecting them to be accurate and expecting you to have the data to back it up. And sometimes you really need to advocate strongly for yourself in order to get what you need, right? Sean, when we're talking about, we've talked a little bit about the data journey and some of the pain points, but there is, a light at the end of the tunnel, however dim sometimes it may seem in the data landscape. But where have you realized the most value from harnessing the power of automation within your data journey?
Yeah, I mean, kind of alluding to what I was saying before, and we were kind of talking about it earlier. I mean, I can spend now at most, I don't need to spend more than 20% of my time on a client collecting data. So that means that gives me 80% back to focus on what does this data mean? What does it mean to their business? What does it mean post-click? Because sometimes, a C-suite is not going to focus on your ads performance if the overall business is down. So it allows me a little bit more of that kind of on the ground understanding of the business, because I'm not spending all the time collecting that data. And I like how you said the light at the end of the tunnel, and very much an optimist with like where this is going. Even after the aftermath of iOS 14 and, Apple's privacy initiatives and everything that's happening from a legislative standpoint across the world, with data becoming more and more black box. Like, what I will say is that even though that's happening at the same time, it's never been easier to combine data, simplify data, visualize data. Even Supermetrics, with the data blending over the last several years, to be able to get into the technical aspects of when Facebook counts a transaction, when Google counts a transaction, what that actually means when it's blended. Like, that's gotten better. Like, everything has gotten better. So that what I think is that we'll have more access to data. There will be so many more data sources. It'll feel daunting and overwhelming, but that you'll be able to actually find ways, and people will be talking about it. There's going to be best practices, case studies shared everywhere, of about how to use it, right? Because the last thing you want to do is be stuck with the data and not know what to do with it, rather than find what you need and then find what you want to improve and or increase. So
Yeah, and one of the interesting things sort of about what you mentioned there with the outcomes and being able to report is that when we're sort of in the thick of it, we might lose sight of that, right? And what we're doing. So you also mentioned analysis by paralysis earlier. I think it's important just to make sure that we're staying up to date with our data, our trends, and that our data is accurate coming through, and always checking that. Rich, I won't call you an expert, but as the pioneer, like we mentioned earlier, what are some of the
I mean, I
outcomes
love
and
the compliment.
learnings you've seen from automating your data pipelines over the years? You've automated in a bunch of different ways, probably some early initially, and then some later on now with data warehousing and all the things sort of happening around that space. What are some of the learnings and outcomes you've seen from there? And maybe if you could, with your outlook on the future.
Yeah, so I'm watching the chat as well, and sort of dumping stuff in there every now and then. I'll come to a point that's been mentioned in there that I'm very passionate to me. First of all, I'm a strong believer, and I learned this the hard way from a very, very good data scientist. She really taught me about this. It's about telling the journey and having what are you trying to tell? What are you trying? Is this an OKR? Is this a KPI thing? What are those KPIs? Or are you just trying to show? In my case, many times I go into situations where people are unaware or the data is not connected together, and I have to build something new, present it in a digestible fashion up, and a technical fashion sideways and down. Down. There's no one below me, so. And then we got to a point where we had too much data. Having lots of data isn't the answer, and that's what was in the chat. I love that. You don't need oodles of data. You need to refine what you need. We got very excited at one point and just started ingesting things, and that's not the way forward. So I would say that getting down on paper, even I have a data dictionary I start before I even put pen to paper in terms of dashboarding for what you want to visualize, what metrics. What's the story, visualization, what kind of charts, where are you pulling from and how you're going to do it, and what's the cadence?
Thank you so much,
what's
Rich.
going in the chat here.
I don't know. There's a cat on Joy's keyboard. Ansi is getting a look into what his employees are doing in the evening over there in Helsinki. Sean, just to wrap us up, any advice for the audience and sort of your outlook on the future here? We got about a minute left. Give us what you think.
Yeah, I mean, we covered a couple points here. Again, I'll read. I'm an optimist. I think the moment that we can find the core KPIs, I think one of the questions are like, what are the core KPIs, right? I think breaking them down into one that influences and one that you need to pay the bills, the transactional, the ROASs compared to the engagement rates and the bounce rates and all of that. Like, I think, not overwhelming yourself is going to be important. So don't get into that paralysis, but knowing that actually this data is there, it can be quickly visualized, and then you can spend most of your time, talking about what does it mean? What do we want to improve? And then having more conversations around that. So I would say, try to avoid analytical paralysis, and then focus on, I would say, 3 to 5 core KPIs that everyone's bought into and that you hold, your marketing teams accountable to, but also your operations team. So.
Thank you so much, Sean. Again, thank you. My name is Zach Bricker with Supermetrics, Rich from the BBC, Sean from Snapshot Interactive. Thank you so much to our host, Jess Nazarewicz. And back over to you all.
There's a lot of cats in that chat.
Oh my goodness. And capybaras by Kate. You know, that's a fun fact if there's anything. They can stay underwater that long.
Well, welcome back, everyone. We hope you had as much fun as we did.
Absolutely. You know, this session was just so interesting. Like, I mean, the way they outlined that whole data journey, it really just goes to show that everyone's data journey begins somewhere. You know,
Yeah.
Sean and Rich basically started by manually pulling data and building out, moved on to building automated systems later on and more advanced reporting. You know, if they can do it, you can do it too.
You know, going with the year of the customers theme, I actually had the pleasure of working with Sean multiple times this year. Sean was a speaker at our New York City SuperSummit. He also joined us as a guest on our Marketing Intelligence podcast,
right,
talking about breaking down the silos in marketing. If you haven't checked out our podcast, I highly recommend you take a listen. We have some really great folks coming to share their experiences of what's happening in today's marketing landscape.
Absolutely, do take a look. And Jess hosts a lot of those, so you know you get more of Jess. It's a win-win, basically.
Win-win.
But yeah, talking about the marketing landscape, Jess, I think it's about that time. It's about time for the last session we have for you guys tonight.
Can you believe that?
I can't believe it flew by so fast. But don't worry, this last session is an exciting one. To cap us off, we'll have Ankita from TikTok join our very own resident TikTok superstar, Chris, to talk about turning viral moments into business results. Jess, what's this session really all about?
Well, TikTok has obviously been blowing up over the recent years, and marketers around the world are scrambling to keep up with these newest TikTok trends. Lucky for us, Ankita and Chris are coming to share some insight on how to keep up with these trends. That was very brat of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think that one might be done.
I think you used that out of context.
And how to not be like us and leverage TikTok and Supermetrics together, and how companies can stay ahead of the curve.
And after this upcoming session, we'll still come back to the studio for one last time to close out today. So stick around. Stick around if you want to hear, if you wanted the community raffle, as well as to hear, you know, whatever good jokes or TikTok dances we still have left.
Absolutely. Let's head over to Ankita and Chris.
Okay.
I'm only here for the party. Trust me, we're just getting started.